Hello folks, Pastor Rocky. Hope you're doing great today. I was just thinking about some dreams that I've had in my life, some of the things that I wished I was able to do. Many of those things I've been blessed to be able to do that. What about you? What about the dreams that you have had, the desires maybe that you've had? Oh, and I'm not talking about going on a trip. I'm not talking about going to the greatest lake where the fish are, or even the best golf courses, or even the best shopping place. I'm talking about with the Lord. What kind of dreams do you have that you will fulfill in the service of the Lord? What happens to us sometimes is that we get so caught up in what goes on in our lives, we personally forget our work and our dreams and our goals for the Lord. Why is this important? The Apostle Paul, that wrote 14 of the New Testament books, had a lot of goals in his life, a lot of dreams. When God called him out of Acts chapter 9, God said to him, I'm going to use you in front of great people, in front of kings and many nations, and God fulfilled his work in the Apostle Paul. But Paul had to be willing to let God have control of his life, and you and I have to do the same thing. You see, the Apostle Paul lived in many, many difficult situations. I mean, some rough times. He got imprisoned all the time. He got beat. He was shipwrecked. I mean, he had all kinds of trouble, but in his mind, he had this desire that he wanted to see Caesar, and he wanted to appear before Nero, that he might share the gospel. Well, the Apostle Paul did not quit. He was relentless. He continued on. Even though many things happened in this man's ministry, many things happened in his life, he did not give in. He did not quit. He had to deal with challenges on every hand, disagreements among churches, problems that he had to right among New Testament churches. Is phenomenal when you read what took place in some of these churches, how the Apostle Paul had to take such a stand, all in the back of his mind, getting to Rome. He wanted to see the Caesar Nero and share the gospel with him. And through that process, he had to go through many things. Let me ask you, perhaps when you first got saved, maybe the early days of your service to the Lord, maybe you had these dreams, these desires. Man, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this. And, because of some knockdowns or some problems that have happened or some discouragement in the churches where you've been. Maybe you've said, well, it just doesn't matter. As long as I get to heaven, I don't care about doing the other stuff. Oh, I used to sing. I used to do this. that was then. This is now. You hear that saying all the time. I contend to you that according to Romans 11:29, the gift that God has given you is still in you, and God's plan hasn't changed for you. He wants to use you in a dynamic way. Well, you say, Pastor, I've made some mistakes. Well, folks, if that's the case, then nobody would be able to serve the Lord because we've all made mistakes. It's critically important to understand the value system that Jesus Christ has put on you, the highest price, his own life. You are worthy of your calling because God has made that through his own Son's death, burial, and resurrection. Well, the Apostle Paul reaches the great point. He's been in Caesarea now for quite a while in jail in the book of Acts, and they start finally for Rome. This is recorded in the 28th chapter of the book of Acts, and they're getting ready to take off and sail to Rome. Well, guess what happens? They take off on the ship to sail, and the ship hits a storm, and it sinks. Now, here's a guy that's been serving the Lord for a while. He's finally going to get on that boat. He's going to finally get to Rome. He's going to finally get to confront Nero because he's a Roman citizen. He has the right to do that, kind of like the Supreme Court. And sure enough, they get 60 miles from Sicily, and the ship goes down. And they have to swim, about 175 of them, to a little island called Malta. And there he had to stay 3 months on that island. Cold when they arrived. The natives on the island built them a fire. The story is told in the 28th chapter of Acts that the Apostle Paul gets some wood, like they're building this fire. He takes some wood, puts it on the fire, and there's a snake on the wood that is so cold that he cannot move. And then when he puts him on the fire heats the snake up, and he reaches up and he grabs the Apostle Paul on the wrist. And the natives know this is a poisonous viper and that Paul will die. And the judgment of the gods must be upon him because he survived the shipwreck, but now he's going to be snake bit on the island. and he's going to die because of snake bite. So the natives know that he is a condemned man, which of course the Apostle Paul, by the grace of God, shook the snake off of his wrist into the fire and was not sick. God healed him. Well, then that let the Apostle Paul witness to the natives. Moral to the story, Paul did get to Rome. He did get to appear before Nero. He did get to share the gospel. Now, Nero didn't accept the gospel as we understand through church history and world history for that matter. In fact, Nero blamed the Christians for all the problems that Rome had. The Apostle Paul was ultimately beheaded and lost his life, but he won Christ. Well, what about that detour that Paul took? Well, many things happened in his life, but on that trip to Malta, even though the ship went down and his destination was Rome, the Apostle Paul still worked for the Lord. What about you and your detours? What about when your plans don't work out, your dreams don't come to pass, your expectations are not met? What are you going to do? What about when poison comes into your life because you're trying to build the fire of the Lord? You going to shake it off and stay close to the fire? Or are you going to give up and die? See, the Apostle Paul had a desire in his heart, and God used him even when things did not go the Apostle Paul's way. The natives learned about God, and therefore his journey was not in vain. Today, it may not be going your way necessarily, but I want to promise you, if you will always put God first, you'll get where you want to be, and God will use you the way that He has told you He will use you, if you will trust and obey. For there's no other way to be happy in Jesus than to trust and obey. God bless you. We love you, and goodbye.